Ladies and gentlemen, greetings and welcome to Let's Talk Theory, the show where we analyze some ideas and hypotheses around our favorite subjects. I'm your host Zelrix, and today we're gonna talk about copyright, lawsuits, spider powers, and cloning. As far as superhero cartoons go, on the DC side of things, you had Batman or the Justice League that were very popular when I was growing up. For the Marvel fan, you had some pretty decent product, like the X-Men cartoon from the 90s that was still very popular when I was young. But there is one specific show that I don't see enough people talking about, even though whenever somebody treats the subject, it's to say that it was a genuinely amazing show. I'm of course talking about the hit cartoon of the late 2000s, The Spectacular Spider-Man. Looking back now, it's hard to believe that this show is older than I was when it first came out. Also, rewatching it, I realized that it was probably the greatest Spider-Man show ever written. It had some generally great characters like Doc Ock or Kraven the Hunter, but also some really underrated comic book villains like Tombstone or Silvermane. This show introduced me to the character of Electro, and honestly, I'll always be grateful for that. Unfortunately, the show had a premature cancellation, thus leading to it not having a proper ending and later be replaced by Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man was alright, but it was by no means spectacular. And as if it wasn't enough, the cartoon was cancelled after a big cliffhanger, and that's gonna be our theory today. What was planned for the future episode of Spectacular Spider-Man? Obviously, we're gonna spoil the entire show, and we're also gonna ignore any teased info or leak considering the future to focus solely on what was given to us by the scenario of the two existing seasons. So now that this is out of the way, let's talk theory! At the end of the show, it is revealed that Norman Osborn was actually the Green Goblin all along, and that he had tricked Peter Parker and his son into thinking Harry was the Green Goblin. Then Norman is seemingly killed in his fight with Spider-Man, only to reappear in an epilogue boarding a flight to the Cayman Island. As the viewer, we are led to believe that this is Norman Osborn starting a new life. But Norman had a proper funeral, and there was no mention of a missing body. Plus, have you seen the size of this explosion? It is very hard to believe that even the Green Goblin could have survived. So if Osborn died, who has boarded the flight at the end of the show? Well, if it isn't Norman, the show had let us a clue to deduce that it is actually a clone. And now it is time to meet Marvel's most prominent cloning expert, Dr. Miles Warren, aka the Jackal. During the course of the show, Miles Warren eventually replaced Dr. Curtis Connors at Oscorp under the tutel of Norman Osborn. Warren eventually became the supervillain known as the Jackal and is known to creating clones of Peter Parker and other important Spider-Man characters. It would be the perfect partnership, think about it. Originally, when Norman Osborn became the Green Goblin and stole the glider from Oscorp, he had no alibi until he ran into the Chameleon at Oscorp dressed as Norman. It is only then and there that Osborn decided to partner with the Chameleon so he would have an alibi while he was the Green Goblin. But what bugs me is the fact that if Norman hadn't run into the Chameleon dressed as himself, he would have had no alibi and would have probably been incriminated as the Green Goblin. That unless he already had an alibi, something that was not as weak as being seen with the Green Goblin while he was stealing the glider, but still strong enough that he would not be convicted. So perhaps Miles Warren created a clone of Norman Osborn that was sent on the other side of town while the Green Goblin was stealing the glider from Oscorp. Witnesses would have seen him, or at least he would have had an alibi that proved that he wasn't on the scene. When people saw the Chameleon dressed as Norman Osborn, he realized that his alibi was too weak compared to the new infos, and that's when he decided to associate himself with the Chameleon and become partners in crime. Then Norman Osborn went back to his life as the Green Goblin, he framed his son and broke his leg, thus winning the Father of the Year award, and was eventually killed in his fight with Spider-Man. With the real Norman Osborn out of the picture, it's obvious that the clone can't just take his place. Norman Osborn is one of the wealthiest and most important person in New York City. His death would have echoed throughout the entire town. So the clone just exiled himself in the Cayman Island, trying to plot a way to return. So for the future, assuming that Norman and his clone both had the same character and the same way of thinking, I think he would have returned trying to overtake Oscorp and Norman's money. Knowing the fact that Peter and Gwen were about to get together, Harry would have probably become the new Green Goblin and try to exterminate Spider-Man, thus avenging his late father and ripping Peter off of his job as the Daily Bugle as the official Spider-Man photograph. Some people, other YouTubers among others, even suggest that the disappearance of Norman Osborn would have set the path for the apparition of the Hobgoblin. The Hobgoblin is one of the most appreciated Spider-Man villains, he's one of his scariest nemesis, and most importantly, he is the logical sequence of events after the death of the Green Goblin. Gobby was the main antagonist for the first 2 seasons of the show. So to top that in the later seasons, it is obvious to me that the Hobgoblin must have an appearance. If it is the case, I like to think that the Hobgoblin would have been a creation of Norman Osborn's clone and Hammerhead, who, after the end of the 2nd season, became the new crime lord of Manhattan after his boss Tombstone was arrested. No matter what would have had happened, a clone of Norman Osborn let loose in nature would have been a really bad news for Peter. He's reckless, relentless, ruthless, he plays by his own rules, and most importantly, he never apologizes. So there you go guys, tell me in the comment section down below, how do you think the show would have ended? And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell to be notified when a new video comes up. Follow me on Instagram to support my artwork, and if you like what you see, follow the link in the description to my ArtPal account to buy some of my best pieces. Then share this video with all your Spider-Man loving friends, and as always, thanks for watching.